Hello everyone and welcome back to the new video. So most of the people can explain Kubernetes concepts, but real interviews are won by solving real production issues. So in this particular video, we are going through top 10 Kubernetes scenario based interview questions that companies can actually ask. From pod crashes to scaling issues to networking as well as deployments. Trust me, if you can answer all of these questions confidently, you can definitely stand out in the DevOps as well as SRE interviews. Okay, so I would like all of you to stay with me till the end, and I promise that this video is definitely going to help you. So in this video, what we are going to do is we'll go through all the questions one by one, and after each question, we are going to wait for 15 seconds for you to think around the possible answers for the question. So this is going to help you build your mind muscle around it and also make you feel confident. So that is why we are going to use this particular approach. Okay. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's go to our first question, and the question is, your pods are stuck in CrashLoopBackOff. How do you diagnose and fix this? And your time starts now. Okay, the time's up. Now let's try to find what is the solution. So whenever there is any kind of error, the first thing that you should be doing is doing kubectl describe pod followed by the pod name and check the event section. So first of all, check the event section and go through the events to diagnose what could be the possible reason. Sometimes, even after describing or watching over the events, you can't find the exact reason. Then, in that case, the solution might be in the container logs because there might be an issue with the application in that case. So, in that case, we can go with the kubectl logs pod name, okay, to see the logs from the crashed container. Sometimes, also, the resource limits might not be sufficient enough for your pod to run, right? So because of which your pod is going out of memory, giving you the error of out of memory killed means memory is too low, right? Then you can also verify if the config maps or the secrets are configured the right way and mounted on your pod as well. Okay, so sometimes they might not be configured the right way, because of which you are getting this error of crash loop back off. You also need to, first thing is to find the root cause and then redeploy the pod. Hopefully this time it would be running smoothly. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, a deployment rollout is stuck and new pods aren't becoming ready. So what do you do? Now your time starts now. And the time's up. Okay, so let's go and see the solution. So the solution is that the foremost thing, whenever your rollout is stuck, you need to check the status of the rollout. And there is a command for it, right? kubectl rollout status deployment followed by the name of the deployment. Then you can check the status of the nodes by using kubectl get pods. They might be pending, they might be in error image pull, or any other error might be showing up. Then even if after this, if you are not able to find out, you need to describe the pods to find the scheduling or image pull errors. There might be a thing that the image that you have defined is not correct, or the credentials to pull the image, that is image pull secrets, are not defined correctly, or there can be an issue with the image pull policy as well, right? So these can be the things. You can, if you want to go back immediately to the working condition, you can just execute the command kubectl rollout undo deployment followed by the deployment name to instantly roll back. So, if you want to quickly roll back and mitigate the current situation, just use rollout undo command and you will be back into the safe condition. Okay? So these are the immediate steps that you would take if your deployment rollout is stuck. Okay? Now let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, your application can't communicate with another service inside of the cluster. How do you debug? Your time starts now. And you are done. Let's move on to the solution. So the first thing is, you need to confirm if the service is already existing or not. So for that, you will be executing the command kubectl get svc -n namespace if it is located in a particular namespace other than default. Okay. Then the most common error is that we define selectors within the service to identify the pods, right? If the selector labels are not correct, they won't be able to select the pods which they want to serve, right? So in order to resolve that first, you need to check the selector labels that you have mentioned inside of the service. You can also verify the endpoints. So only if the selector labels are able to identify the pods, then only endpoints will be created. If you execute kubectl get endpoints, you will be able to view if these endpoints are created or not for your service. Next important thing is the pod itself might not be working correctly. So you need to check that first. Okay, that could also be the issue. Second thing is, curl the service using service name dot namespace dot svc dot cluster dot local. So this is nothing but a service DNS. This is the standard fully qualified domain name for your service. Okay, so try curling that service. Also check the network policies. They may be blocking the ingress or the egress traffic. So that also needs to be considered. Okay. So this was about our question third. Now let's go to fourth question. A node is in a not ready state. How do you investigate and recover? Your time starts now. Okay, it's done. So the solution is that first thing you need to describe the node, and that for that you have a command kubectl describe node followed by the node name. Check conditions as well as event section. Like if there is any error, you will be able to spot it there itself. SSH into the node, check whether the kubelet is running. Very, very important. You can also check the container runtime if it is running. There might be another issue related to the disk pressure, memory pressure, PID pressure flags on the node as well. So you need to check all of these parameters as well. Next thing is about kubelet. So what you can do is you can restart the kubelet as well. if it has crashed. Okay, and if you have identified an error now, okay, so what you need to do is you need to coordinate, you need to drain it, then you need to fix the issue, and once the issue has been fixed, you can then uncoordinate. Why do you do this? To prevent unwanted scheduling. Okay, so these are the things that we need to follow. I hope you are enjoying this. Let's go to the question number 5. Your horizontal pod autoscaler isn't scaling pods up under load. Why? So there can be multiple reasons. Your time starts now. And it's done. What you need to do is you first need to describe the HPA and check the current metrics as well as conditions. Second important thing is metrics server. It should be installed and it should be in a running state inside of your cluster. Okay, so verify the pods if they have resource requests already set. So every pod must have a specific resource requests as well as limits already defined at its own part. Okay, then also you can check the HPA configuration. What is the scaling policies that you have defined? Sometimes the stabilization window seconds that you have defined are too long, because of which it is taking time to scale the number of pods, right? Then also check the minimum replicas as well as the maximum replicas. You might be at the max. For example, you are already running 5 replicas and the max that you have defined in your HPA is 5. Then how is it going to scale even if the load increases, because you have already mentioned it to be 5, right? So in order to set another limit, you need to redefine your max replica count. Okay, now the next thing is about confirm the HPA target metrics, that what is it that you have defined for your HPA, whether it is CPU utilization, whether it is memory utilization, or if it is a custom. Okay, so these are the things which you need to go through, right? So let's go to the next question. A persistent volume claim is stuck in pending. How do you resolve it? Your time starts now. Okay, your time's up. Let's go to the solution. The solution is that first you need to describe the PVC, look at the events for provisioning errors. Okay, check the storage class first. This is the most common error or the most common mistake, that is your storage class might not be existing and you still have created your PVC, because of which it is gone into the pending state. So first thing you need to check the PVC itself, describe it, check the events. Second thing is about storage class, check whether it exists or not. Third thing is about check the access modes, right, as well as the storage size, match and available persistent volume. Check if both of these things match the persistent volume. If it is not matching, it will go into the pending state. In case you are doing dynamic provisioning, the provisioners that you are using must be in a running state. They must be installed. For example, if you are using EBS CSI driver, it must be installed already, right? Whether you are installing it using Helm or kubectl or any other stuff, it should be installed and running previously. If it is not there and this provisioner is what you have defined inside your persistent volume claim, it is going to give you a pending state because it is not able to find the provisioner itself. Okay. Now also check the cloud provider quotas or the node zone affinity mismatches. Now what does this mean? If you are trying to create a persistent volume using PVC and your AWS provider is out of quota of creating volumes. Volumes can't be created because the quota is over. So you need to check that as well. Okay. Also the node zone affinity. What does this mean? That if you have defined your PVC in another zone and the pod is in another zone, then it is going to create mismatch because of which it will go in pending state. Okay, because they won't find each other because of this mismatch. Now let's go to the next question. I hope this was helpful. So you need to do a zero downtime deployment for a critical service. What's your approach? Now here what you need to do is you want a zero downtime deployment. Okay, so think around it and your time starts now. Now let's go to the solution part. So use rolling update strategy with max unavailable of 0 as well as max surge as 1. Now what is this? Okay. Now when we are doing a deployment, what happens is old pods go down and the new pods come up, right? Now in case of max unavailable is equal to 0, what we are trying to define is that we must have at least one old pod before creating another new pod, which means that at least one pod is serving the traffic. That's it. Then max surge is what? If the required number of replicas is 2, it can allow the 3 replicas to stay. Why? Because if 2 of them are coming up, the old one, at least one among the old is available, so that if there is any issue with the new one while just going from pending to running state, then during that state we at least have one old one, right? So this is about max surge. So you can make use of max unavailable equals to 0 and max surge is equal to 1. Set the readiness probe so the new pods receive traffic only when truly ready. See, readiness probe is what it defines that your pod is ready to receive the traffic. If you haven't defined readiness probe, it will consider the pod is ready as soon as it is in the running state, which might not be the case, right? So that is why it is important to set the readiness probe. Once it is ready, then only it is going to receive the traffic, because of which it will help us with the zero downtime. Next thing is mean ready seconds to hold back traffic before briefly after the pod becomes ready. So you can define mean ready seconds so that it takes its own time to get into the ready state. Use pod disruption budget to ensure minimum available pods. So what is pod disruption budget is nothing but a situation where we want at least minimum available pods. Even during maintenance, we want these number of pods. Let's say you have got 5 pods and you want to take 2 pods for maintenance, then at least 3 pods should be in a running state serving the traffic. Okay, so this is what is defined within the pod disruption budget. So this is something, if we define, it is going to give us zero downtime, right? So after deploy, monitor kubectl rollout status and watch error rates in metrics. So you need to monitor the rollout status and also watch the error rates. So this is going to help us with a zero downtime. Okay. So now let's go to the next question. A secret mounted into a pod has changed, but the pod still reads the old value. Why? Now your time starts now. And the time's up. Let's go to the solution. Environment variables from the secrets are baked at the pod start, which means they consider the secrets as soon as the pods start. Now, mounted secret volumes do refresh, but with a sync delay, might be 1 minute by default. If mounted as volume, wait for kubelet sync to restart the pod to force refresh. So what actually is happening, you have your secret mounted on a pod and you redefine the secret, that is you change the secret. Now you want your pod to pull the new secret values, right? Now the mounted secret volumes do refresh, but they have some delay. They might take 1 minute by default. Okay, so what you can do is you can wait for the kubelet sync, or you can restart your pod to force the refresh. So if injected as environment variables, pod must be restarted to pick up the new value. Okay. Best practices to use external secret managers with reload sidecars. So if you are making use of external secrets managers like HashiCorp Vault, then in that case, if the secrets are rotated, automatically the ESO present will be updating those rotated secrets inside of your pod. Okay, so you don't need to worry about all of these things. Okay, so that is the thing. If you have so the overall answer is that if you have mounted these secrets as volume, you can wait for the kubelet sync or restart. If you have injected as environment variable, then pod must be restarted and has no other option. Okay, so mostly you can go for a restart in general. Okay. Now let's go to the next question. Your cluster is running out of resources, but you can't add nodes immediately. What do you do? Your time starts now. And the time's up. So what you can do basically in this situation is that you can give priorities. You can give priority to the pods which are very critical, okay, and preempt the lower priority workloads. You can go for that. Okay, this is what generally is done. And you can also execute kubectl top pods -a to find the resource hogs consuming excessive CPU or memory. You need to find out first like which resources are consuming more amount of memory, because of which the whole cluster is getting affected, right? Once you find them out, you can limit ranges, right? So you can set appropriate requests or limits on high consuming deployments, right? So that only those resources are showing some sort of an error or are in any kind of difficulty, but the rest of the cluster will be in a safer situation, right? So what you can do is first identify with the help of kubectl top pods. Next thing is to set appropriate limits on them. Next thing is to scale down the non-critical or dev workloads to free the capacity, and then enable the priority classes so critical pods preempt the lower priority workloads, so that only the critical workloads are given higher priority over the non-critical ones. Okay, so this is what you will be doing if your cluster is running out of resources. Okay, now the next thing, a pod's liveness probe keeps failing, causing it to restart repeatedly, right? So how do you fix it? Your time starts now. And we are done. Let's go to the solution. So again here, what you need to do is you need to describe the pod and check liveness probe failed events. So what are the possible events because of which the liveness probe has failed? You can check the config of your probe, that is the endpoint that you have defined for your liveness probe. You can check the port, the initial delay seconds, the timeout seconds. Okay, you can increase the initial delay seconds. Sometimes what happens is, if you want to, let's say, connect to a database, let's say you have a backend application and that pod needs to connect to a database, and it might take some time to connect to the database. So it might happen that before actual connection itself, timeout seconds are happening and it is just, failing and again restarting, right? So it is causing some issue over there. So it may be because of the initial delay seconds. So if you increase the initial delay seconds, then that connection can happen properly, and then you can proceed further, right? You can also check if the probe endpoint itself has a bug or requires some sort of an authentication. Sometimes authentication is required, so proper credentials need to be defined for that matter. So we need to consider that as well. Then the next thing is about considering switching to a startup probe first, so liveness only runs after the startup. So mostly such situations happen in case the startup is not happening correctly, right? And we have not defined the startup probe and we are just defining the liveness probe. So what you need to do is first define the startup probe once all the connections are set, and then we should go for the liveness probe. Liveness probe is for keeping on checking whether your pod is live or not, right? So it is not designed for the startup probe, right? Startup probe is for starting your application, whereas liveness probe is for checking whether your application is live or not. So they have got their own functionalities. So according to them, we need to design our pod configuration, right? So this was all about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed a lot. Okay, and if you really got some benefit out of it, do let me know in the comment section. And if you want more such videos, do let me know. I am very much excited to make such videos. Okay, so do make sure to like, share and subscribe if you found the content useful. And thank you so much. Have a nice day.